embarking on this small problem in order to bring the two worlds together. Federal Councillor Pascal Couchepin, ETH's supreme mentor and authority, has become a cherished and recurring opportunity during this year. We are deeply grateful for your involvement and your dedication to ETH. But a singular significance must be attributed to the topic of the symposium and to the
Your Excellency, President of the Federal Institute of Technology, Zurich, distinguished speakers, and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my deep appreciation at the beginning for giving me this opportunity to participate in this discussion.
Subject, fear and anxiety. I guess, as you all mentioned, one familiar experiences, I think everybody, and day and night also, especially in dream time, anxiety, fear, also is happen. So I think anyway, that's the part of our mind. And I believe that these are necessary because of anxiety, fear brings us some kind of cautious sort of attitude, vigilance. So most of the emotions, I think they have their own sort of task. Role. But now here, perhaps I think from Buddhist point of view, I think here maybe you see two subjects or two points I think may be relevant. One, fears, anxiety, also a phenomena which comes and goes. That means it depends on its own conditions and sources, causes. So some anxiety, or I think, so therefore, in order to know more about these emotions, it is very important, very essential to investigate what is the causes, immediate causes, and long-term causes, and conditions. So, I think not only Buddhism, but also other spiritual traditions, I think deal with this. And then modern science also is a deep case. So I think the further rest of the day discussions, I think involve the how to develop, at least it will happen later. But then another aspect, Buddhism. Now this is the law of causality. Everything is due to its own causes and conditions. Go like that. see another meaning, another aspect. 뒤냐마라 개인들 때문에 요리 죽을사지. 그래서 뭐 죽을지.
So when we speak of the idea of interdependence within the context of causation of a psychological experience like fear or anxiety, we can think about interdependence both in terms of a sequential cause and effects, where there is a temporal sequence, but also interconnectedness, interdependence within a simultaneous set of experiences as well.
Then another aspect actually involved here, perhaps according I think Buddhist concept. I think most of the causes or conditions of unhappiness or suffering, pain, come from wrong view. 가라파즈 상어드세미 여체들이 동네들이 망체들이 해주 망체도 오라 망체들이 신주로 올라올 때는 이렇게 되지. 자상 상황이 그렇지 용기가 그러다 대외 즉 상배 차들이 해주 신주로 모임들로 해주고요. 사들이 이제 주다가는 셰프들이야 그렇지 주다가보다 뭐였을까 때 틈에 상불 처음 들고들이 세면적으로 있어 시기가 사들이 이제 다 the fear, the anxiety 이 나와라 세면 주셔지게 하고 그 대응을 준비해 고요하다. The fear, the anxiety, 릭직이 남도 조다로 준비를 해주고요. 리치로 몸에 준비 fear, the 가소다 anxiety 거예요. 자사는 근세를 때문에 그 친질 말로 왜 장대 애니 진난다 로인세 띠 그렇지. 친질로 로요 겐시니 진난다 남다용대한테 다시지 건너야지. 뒤에 책을
One aspect of Buddhist thought which may be relevant to the subject here, which is the subject of the symposium, fear and anxiety, is the Buddhist psychological understanding of the nature of suffering and the causal dynamics, the psychological dynamics that give rise to psychological pain and suffering, which include fear and anxiety as well. So within the Buddhist psychology, there is an understanding that if we probe deeply, much of our psychological pain and suffering and anxiety really arise from a kind of a false way of understanding the state of affairs, reality. There's an element of distortion, there's an element of exaggeration or form of a distortion in the way in which we understand the world. So, so these emotional and psychological processes that tend to lead to suffering really have greater level of this form of falsification of reality. And closer our understanding to the reality, the lesser its tendency to produce suffering and pain. So because of this, in Buddhism, Buddhist psychology, there is an expression: knowledge leads to freedom and happiness, and distortion or distorted view leads to pain and suffering. So, taking this idea as a basis, perhaps we can say that if we examine our experience of fear and anxiety, we could possibly distinguish two forms. Those type of fear and anxiety that are grounded upon...
I think generally, those emotions are in general, and in this case, fear and anxiety,
that are really grounded upon certain reason, certain understanding of the situation. These, in some sense, are actually, instead of avoiding them, we need them. We need them for our survival and for our happiness. Whereas those emotions, particularly fear and anxiety, that are
Or
based
happiness
upon
or further progress.
and those emotions such as fear and anxiety that are based upon a distortion of reality, an exaggeration and falsification. These are types of fears and emotions which we can overcome and we should aim to overcome.
You see, which is right or which is wrong. No. Now we need investigation and we need maximum utilization about intelligence and also now modern time including instrument or technology. But still, I think through that way, still I think there's limitation. Then finally, we do more.
And one option is to use divination.
So maybe unscientific. Okay, thank you.
As is already said, there are fear of anxieties which are in harmony with reality, which are attuned to reality. And if you didn't have a reaction of fear when a car is about to run over, it will be pretty bad for your future. But again, as already said too, there are a lot of fears which are actually results of mind construct, rumination about the past, expectation about the future, and which are not in adequation with reality. And most of the time, we can see that the way we interpret and the way we translate the outer condition into inner experience can override the actual outer conditions. And this is very true in the case of all emotion, in the case of well-being as a state of being rather than the pleasurable experience. It is true in terms of being fundamentally unwell and unhappy deep in one's being, even though the outer condition seems to be perfect. It seems you have all to be happy, and yet you are in a state of deep misery. And so this is true also for fear of anxiety as a result of mind activity. It's well known that we can remain lucid, calm, with inner strength, with the power of making good decisions, even in situations which seems very chaotic and threatening, while we can be at the opposite, in a state of deep anxiety, distress, and react to the slightest change in the conditions in a very unjustified way. That overriding factor shows the importance of working with one's mind, of trying to transform the minds to make it to be more in harmony with reality and to react with in terms of emotional way, with the right emotion at the right time and with the right amount. Isones once said in Portugal that if you become the happy owner of a high-tech flat at the 100th floor of a super modern luxurious skyscraper, but if you are totally broken within, all you're going to look for is a window from which to jump. And so, in the same way, our control on the outer world is sort of limited, it's ephemeral, and also it's illusory. Definitely, we should strive for establishing outer conditions which are conducive to well-being, to inner peace, to not be in a constant state of stress, anxiety, and fear, and a sense of deep insecurity. But at the same time, and so for that, we need to strive for justice, for freedom, for having access to education, to health, to all what a state of flourishing due to outer condition can provide. Yet it is very clear that this will not suffice, precisely for the very reason that the way we experience it in the short and the long term, our state of being, is going to eventually override those situations. I gave the example of someone who, even everything seems to be fine, decides to end his or her life. Similarly, when everything seems to go wrong, we can still maintain inner strength, serenity, and inner peace. So then, in terms of the sense of insecurity and anxiety that depends upon the workings of our mind, how, from the Buddhist perspective, where does that come from? Well, in a way, we should distinguish two kind of notions. One is an exacerbated sense of self-importance. The other one would be a sense of genuine self-confidence and fearlessness in terms not of being unaware of dangerous threats from the outside, but more in the sense of having the confidence that one will be able to cope, when have the inner resources to cope to whatever might come one's way in terms of the ups and downs of life. Now, it may seem that for that, we might need a very strong sense of self, a very firm, assured, robust sense of self. So how can we distinguish that from self-confidence? A genuine sense of self from a distorted sense of self? Well, we know that things change. From birth to now, our body has changed every minute. Our experience changed. For the last few minutes, we gained so much in terms of new experiences, sensations, and so forth. But we seem to feel that we need, deep within, the sense of a core aspect of our being. So of course we have this history, that is the person, that dynamic flow that is constantly changing, yet that continuity as a kind of unity because it is continuous. There is a continuous history of experience. So if we just call that the self as a mere name, like we give the name of Ganges River to this continuous flux of water and whatever the Ganges River carries along, that is perfectly fine. Now if we believe that in the center of that, there's something like a small head that comes out and says, I'm the Ganges River, and we focus all our attention on that, then in terms of that notion of self, we are heading for trouble. We cannot help believing that there is a unitary, continuous, autonomous, self-sustaining sort of core that we experience as the I. And we believe that this is more or less the same when I was a child, when it's now. That makes me still be what I'm supposed to be. Now if we give an over-importance to that mere concept of just recognizing the continuity of the stream of the person, of the stream of experience, of our consciousness, and our relation with the environment. So what will happen is instead of functioning in harmony with reality, we are going to react, overly react, according to that feeling of there being a unitary, lasting, autonomous self. Therefore, we feel that we need at all costs to please and to protect that self. And we start sort of creating a small bubble to protect that self. Now by doing so, what we are actually doing is we are providing the best target for fear and anxiety and the feeling of insecurity. Because everything is going to be a threat to that self. Someone who shouts an insult at us, that's going to hit directly to that sense of self-importance. Jealousy, envy, pride, arrogance, hatred, obsessive desire, all that is more or less comes at the core to be related with that exacerbated sense of self-importance. So that deep sense of self-importance gives rise to a strong vulnerability to all the causes and conditions that we meet outside, that will trigger a threat to that self, or the self is going to imagine that if it could be pleased in the sense of power, beauty, pleasurable sensation, fame, all those outer conditions, that self is going to be so pleased, is going to be incredibly happy. So by doing so, we don't see that we're actually superimposing on our experience. And then, when the gap between this and reality becomes too wide, then all of a sudden it collapses. And then we feel in a deep state of distress, anxiety, we're sort of broken down. So that false self of self becomes then the core source of all those very strong impulses of attraction and repulsion that then give rise to mental toxic, afflictive emotions, which are obsessive desire, hostility, a sense of envy and exasperated jealousy and pride, which makes our life miserable. Now, people very often in the West, no, if you don't have this strong sense of self, then you are just like a vegetable. You just have taking the heart of out of your chest. You are no more a rich, colorful life with whatever is needed to progress in life and have an increasingly creative and meaningful life. In fact, it seems to turn to be the opposite. Because if you deconstruct that very strong grasping, that distorted notion of self, and see more in a way that is more attuned to reality, meaning that seeing things as interdependent, that the gap between self and others is not as big as it seems. The gap between self and the world is not as big as it seems, but that dynamic flow of your experience of consciousness is also in interdependence with the dynamic flow of others' experiences and also of the outer environment. So in that sense, if you burst that bubble, that limited bubble of self-exasperated, self-important and ego grasping, then your mind becomes so much faster than those usual sort of arrows of what usually creates anxiety is not going to be so disturbing as before. And so then, a genuine sense of self-confidence can arise from not being so much focalized on this fake notion of self. Self-confidence, why? Because the target is no more there. And if we give very simple examples, it does happen all the time. Like if you are by a cliff and you shout insults, you are a bastard, and he comes back, you think it's sort of funny. Because obviously you shouted that, your own voice comes back, you are not really meant to hurt you and debase you. So you laugh. Now, the person next to you said the same thing, and you feel incredibly upset. The words, the sounds, everything was the same. The only difference, the target was there in the second case. You sleep, take a nap in the middle of a lake in a nice boat. Suddenly another boat runs into your own boat and you wake up and you say, who is that guy who is not letting me having this nice sleep in the boat in Sunday afternoon? And you're so angry. You got up, you see another boat just drifting. So then you laugh. Why? Again, you say, the first case you thought your sense of self was target. Second time, of course, we know it wasn't the case. The same is for the strong clinging from the eye, we go to the clinging to the mind. There are well-known studies that you attribute a bigger price to an object if you think it's yours. And as always gave the example of if you see a beautiful Chinese vase in a show in the shop and the seller drops it down and you say, oh, what's such a pity, such a nice vase, just broken, and you go on your way. If you just bought that vase for $1,000, it's on your chimney and the cat makes it falling down, you say, my vase is broken, and suddenly that very label you have attached to the vase makes you unhappy. So now how can we reverse that in a way? Or how can we have the genuine self-confidence of fearlessness that is not to be blind to not stepping upon a snake or not being run over by a car, but in the sense of self-confidence that comes from knowing that you have the inner strength and resources to cope with whatever may come your way. So that's precisely where mind training comes in. And mind training, as a concept that is dear to the dialogue of the science and Buddhism and the Mind Life Institute, is precisely the first-person experience. To first of all have a better knowledge of the nature and quality of emotions in terms of which one are afflictive in the sense of creating inner torments, and which long-term emotion that we have cultivated over a long time as a skill contribute to genuine flourishing and well-being, like loving kindness, compassion, openness, patience, know how to be content instead of constantly craving. When you have two, you want two. When you have one, you want two, and so forth. So first of all, a taxonomy of emotions in terms of their result on yourself and others in terms of genuine well-being, not just pleasurable sensation. Like, it's nothing to do with attraction or repulsion. You may be compulsively attracted to someone, and you might say it's positive because you go towards something, but in fact, it causes torment, like obsession. Then once this is done, now can we do something about it? If emotion was, this kind of toxic emotion was so much wired in our mind that there was no way to get rid of them, like the dye of this cloth. To remove it, I have to tear this cloth apart in pieces. No other way. But if it's just like a spot on the cloth, then I might remove it. So it would be too long to go in the full analysis of that, but just to give an image. Mental events are possible because we have a basic cognitive faculty. We may call that pure awareness, consciousness. It is the very basic quality that makes a difference between a stone and a conscious being. And that allows all kinds of emotion and thoughts. Now, to function, that should be something like a surface of a mirror. The quality, the very qualitative surface of a mirror is that it allows all kinds of images to arise. Ugly faces, hateful faces, and beautiful ones. If they were penetrating the mirror, the ugly faces will remain there for good, and it will not allow the other one to arise. So there must be a basic quality of mind that allows all positive and negative emotion, yet is not intrinsically tainted by them. So that's the idea. And that's not just a sort of kind of nice utopian dogma. It also corresponds to first-person experience. When you go deeper and deeper in the mind, at some point, behind the screen of thought, you come to this basic awareness. That is at the source of all thought. If that is the case, then we have the possibility of working with the inner causes and conditions of transforming the mind that will allow slowly to make flourish positive emotions that are conducive to genuine well-being, and slowly fade away those who are detrimental to that genuine well-being. That's the whole idea of mind training. It is a skill. It's not going to happen right now because, as Professor Moller mentioned, this comes to a long-term habituation. Instant emotions build up moods, what you call them feelings, and over the years, those moods that may last for hours or days or months will come into traits. So how, by what kind of magic could you reverse that process in a few moments? You need in the same way to exert mindfulness and vigilance to be able to recognize the first spark of an afflictive emotion which you have known or discovered to be afflictive by your own experience. And then work with them moment by moment so that instead of proliferating and invading your mind, you know how to make them switch and pass through. We give the images like a bird passing through the sky without leaving trace. If gradually you become expert in that, then that accumulation of moments of mindfulness and vigilance and knowing how to deal properly with emotions will change your mood, and after months and years, eventually will change your traits. So, in relation with what Professor Moller mentioned about the long-term habituation, one of the interesting findings of the paper which you mentioned was precisely that, as far as we could see with those 8 subjects, actually the intensity of the gamma activation seems to be proportional to the number of thousands of hours and 10,000 of hours which those practitioners have gone through, which is very encouraging in a way, but also a strong reminder of how we should be diligent. And it's only as it says once, if you think that enlightenment, we would wish enlightenment to be easy, fast, and if possible cheap. That's not going to happen. We need a constant effort, but that effort is so much worth it. We don't mind getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to jog, and there's so many of those cyclists going around the lake here, to be in good health. We don't mind to spend 15 years for education and more years to become a professional. Why are we so hesitant to turn our gaze a little bit within and work out at least a little bit on what actually determines the very quality of every instant of our life, which is how our mind works? It is possible, it is the most incredible adventure. We have a kind of slight fear and sense of inertia toward that. I met a young Californian teenager who said, I don't want to look into my mind, I'm afraid of what I'm going to find there. I mentioned it to his audience, he said, that is the most fascinating adventure, more interesting to go to the movie. So much happening in one's mind. But we have to have a better knowledge of what happens in one's mind. And also find the means to transform one's mind, because although it's necessary and desirable to transform the outer world, at the same time, even a minor change in the way we experience the world is going to change our world, because that's the world we experience. There's major consequences. So I think there's a very strong neglect, in a way, of the potential we have for change. And we all have that. We all have this sort of basic goodness, which is simply the surface of the mirror. So we can just wipe out the mirror, clean it up, and that's a wonderful task. And it's one of the most enthusiastic adventures in life. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ricard, for your stuff.
Ogni scusa, ti slampo.